Hello, beautiful souls out there. I hope you're able to get out in nature like Starlight is. Woo! You can see Starlight spinning around, right? So anyway, I love you so much, and I hope you're able to get out in nature and like Starlight is. And depending on where you live, you might not want to go out. But anyway, I love you so much, and thank you, all of you, yes, all of you, for loving and supporting Starlight. Hello, my name is Starlight. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and you can find me on YouTube, and that is at Starlight, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman. Plus, don't forget you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, plus give me a thumbs up, and you can also leave a message down below, beep, 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 and you can share my videos with your family, your friends. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, and you can check out my playlist. Plus, you can find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman Starlight. So, new topic. This is, aren't you just you push the button, right? You know what you're getting yourself into, but maybe not. Maybe you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So anyway, here we go with a new topic for today. This is things that we all don't think about, and this video here, it's about why it's so important to heal yourself, when you break up with someone, and before you start another relationship. It's so vitally important, and also it's about what happens after you break up with someone, what to expect, how does your life change after you've planned it, hey, this is not working for me, and every relationship is going to be different. Not all endings end the same, right? We all know that. We've all been broken, either. I'll tell you what, I've only had one guy that broke up with me because I was only 16. I didn't know any better, But all the other guys, I broke up with them, So when it comes to either you broke up with them or they broke up with you, either way, actually, I can't say either way, because if you didn't expect it, you didn't have nothing to prepare for nothing, They already had their mind set, you might have crawled on your hands and knees begging them back, and you might have done that a few times, and that happens in a lot of times in relationships where someone's not doing all the work, or they're not really appreciating that person that they say they're in love with, but they're not really proving themselves to be in that relationship. So there's relationships that end because they gave them way too many chances, and they still, they say a whole lot of shit, but they didn't do shit about working on the relationship. But that doesn't always happen, so depending on like your situation is, like who ended it, why did they end it, and or maybe you ended it, did you end the relationship and said, what, I'm growing and you're pulling me down, I can't deal with, my peace and happiness is stolen because I want to grow. And this happens to a lot of people where they don't even understand, but they know that something's not right with the relationship. They know, I'll tell you what, it's a big indicator when you have a hard time, getting intimate with that person anymore, where you don't want to go out in public with that person anymore. You don't want to celebrate the holidays anymore, when the holidays come, you're like, I know what that's like, and especially around this time of the year, this happens a lot, October, it's kind of a build-up, people will fake it till they make it through the holidays, through, October, Halloween, that's not a big deal, right? Yeah, a lot of people, might not even celebrate that, and they might not, might not even do anything, as far as like, spending time with that person because it's just about, wearing stuff and going out and having parties and drinking and dressing up. And some people, they do other things on those holidays, like wicked spells and black magic and all that. But then Thanksgiving comes up, Now that's like family time, eating together, getting together, with, the girlfriend, husband, wife, boyfriend, whatever, whatever you're involved in, so Thanksgiving is really tough, because now you're like, already that, and then Christmas is coming, and that is where, not everybody celebrates Christmas. So it depends on, do you celebrate Christmas? So that really has a lot to do, things that, where people end up like, when they know it's not working, they dread these holidays because, oh, great, I got to get together, and I don't know what your relationship is like with your girlfriend or wife or husband or boyfriend. Did you have a great, did you have a great relationship with them? Did you ever meet them? I say this because that happens. There's people that they never meet, They live so far away, you can't get there, whatever, You might have heard about them, or maybe they're not even in a relationship with their families. So, so you got Christmas, and then January, with the 4th of July, starting the New Year's, January, February. It all leads up to the Valentine's Day, where that's where, a lot of people dread that time because of Valentine's Day is coming, and through the holidays, through October, with Halloween, and then Thanksgiving with the family. Now you got, Christmas, and then the New Year's, and then are you gonna, start the new year with that, your ex? With your girlfriend or wife or husband or boyfriend? So that, I believe if you plan on really wanting to be with that person for the next year, it's good to end that relationship before the next year starts. That way you're already cutting cords with your, that girlfriend, wife, husband, or boyfriend before the new year starts. That way when you start the new year, you're starting a new year, and you're already cutting those ties with those people, whether girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, or wife. So what people don't think about when they break up with someone is that they don't think about when they break up what their life is going to be like when they're not around, and when it's done and said and over with, when you're no longer living with them anymore, and now you're, you separated. No matter how you separate, whether you're married or whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, or husband or wife, now you're separated. Now you're not living together. You broke up, and it doesn't mean that you actually had the divorce or anything like that, but you're no longer, that it's never going to work. You try to make it work, and it didn't work. They didn't want to, put any action into the relationship, and you it's always important to do what you can do, like in any relationship, is to try to make it work, but if they don't want to, this has been going on in a long time, as far as like like the guinea pig going around in circles. If you've been doing all the work and they're the guinea pig going around in a circle, and they're not even working on the relationship, they're not respecting you and all these things, you have a choice to keep on putting up with it for the next new year, or you could do something about it and say, I had enough. I've tried to communicate and to understand that nobody's perfect, no matter what kind of relationship you are in, is that, there's always both of you, no matter what they did or, maybe how you responded, there's times like Starlight, what her biggest thing was about relationships was I put up with too much shit. So that was a lesson for Starlight, as I put up with that, I put up with this, I was putting up with too much shit. So that was where, I had to learn lessons, or I didn't speak up, and I was afraid to speak up because I didn't want confrontation. So those are things that, no matter what kind of relationship you are in, is that everybody, has a part. There's times that people, they put up with stuff in a relationship and they never do anything about it. And so they have to learn to speak, and they have to learn to open up their mouth and have communications. And both parties should be working on making the relationship work. But if it's only one-sided and it's only the one person that's really doing all the work and the other person's not, then that's a good indicator that you're with the wrong person. And it's all about them. It's not really about you and them, us, we, it's all, they gave up. But there's people that they get in relationships and, they hang on to you for a reason. Maybe it's money, maybe it's sex, maybe it's a house, maybe it's who you are. So there's some people that will hold on to a relationship even though they are not, interested in working on themselves. There's something that holds them still to you. It might be that they got too comfortable in the house with you, because that happens, and that's why it's so important to get out of your comfort zone, is because when you're in a relationship, sometimes you get so used to being in the location where you are. Sometimes, people get so comfortable with their relatives and their friends, where you feel like family. And that's not always the case, So when it comes to relationships, it does take two to make that relationship work. Plus, things that people don't expect and they don't think anything of is when you do break up with someone, is everything changes. When you break up with them, is your whole life changes. You're on your own, and that when you the first year is the worst when it comes to breaking up with someone, because it's kind of like the backwards on this, just like getting together with someone. The first year, when you've separated and you've been by yourself for a long time, and then you get involved with someone, and then you connect with someone, the first year is the hardest to me, because if you only waited for so many months and you got involved with that person, every single holiday, if they've gone through abuse through that relationship, they're going to be with you, and you're going to deal with those emotions that will come up to the surface in that relationship. And it's going to be really hard, and that is why it's so important to have time to heal and not be in a rush to get into another relationship right away, because you need time to heal that relationship, because there's energy that is with you. So like when you break up with someone, the first year is the worst, because if you broke up with them before the new year, before the next year, well then, when January, you're going to think of, okay, where was I, how was everything going on in the relationship on New Year's? Where was I? Do you do this? Is like every holiday is like, where was I last year? I did this Christmas. Is like, where was I last year at Christmas time? And if you're in a relationship, you're going to say, how was our relationship during Christmas time last year? And so that's why it's so important to have that space and time away from that person, so you can have time to heal. So that way, when the holiday comes up, it's not about spending that you weren't with that person. Like if you were separated for 2 years, then when you think of, hey, where was I last year at Christmas time, it has nothing to do with them, because if it was 2 years ago from that time, is that when you think of where was I last year, they weren't there. well, 2 years, I mean, like, hang on, I gotta say that again. So 2 years from now, then when you go back and you think the year after, they're not in your life because 2 years ago they were, but a year later they're no longer, they were not with you as far as a relationship goes. So those are things that people don't think about. Is just like, I am so sorry. I'm making this video and there's a couple over here arguing as I'm making this video. So I'm so sorry if I seemed kind of unfocused, but wow, here I'm making a video on this. So anyway, so these are things that people are not prepared for when they leave. It took them a lot of courage to face the person and say, I'm done. I've tried everything, apparently you're not interested, you're not working on yourself, you don't care, or whatever the story is, or all kinds of different things. I can't cover all the different reasons why people break up, but when you realize that it's not working, you've done everything, you've been patient with them, you've been working at it, you communicated, and there's no, they don't want to spend time with you, they don't want to sleep with you, they don't want to have sex with you, they don't want to hug you, they don't want to spend time in public with you. Those are definitely indicators that they're done. So is there a reason why you need to have them in your life anymore when they don't even, it, you can feel the energy. It's not about what they're saying, it's not about what they're not saying. It can be sometimes, because some people will express themselves to the fullest, but sometimes even if they don't say anything, is that how the vibes are, how the frequency and the energy is with them. You could feel it. You could feel it without them even. They might be afraid to say anything, because depending on their sign, they might not like confrontation, and they'd rather go through hell instead of facing and communicating with you. Because that's an area that they need to grow. So things that people are not expecting when they break up with someone is dealing with family after that. If you were really close with that family and now you're going through a breakup, are you going to spend time with that family? Are they that kind of family that you could still spend time with them or talk to them, or is it something that you completely have to cut off? So you got to figure that out, because now when the holidays come, if you did spend holidays together, that's something that's going to change and shift as far as when you don't no longer have that person in your life, whether they're married or not. So that's something that changes that a lot of people don't think of, because they're so focused on being brave and communicating and the whole mindset of where am I going to go, do I need to get a job, where am I going to live, it's a lot on a person just figuring that out. What am I going to say? When am I going to do it? When am I going to spill the beans and say I've had enough? And it's easy to when you're in relationships like that, when you feel uncomfortable, because it is a very uncomfortable thing for anybody to go through. And there's every relationship is different. If it was abusive relationship, get the blank out of there. That's all I got to say. Get the blank out of there one way or another. Even if you got to live in your car, if you have a car, you want to get out. So other things that people don't think about, now I got it. Oh, I was thinking of this, is now, how long were you with this person? Where did you live? What did you do together? So now, after you break up with someone, say if you had a favorite restaurant, it will never be the same now. What if you had a favorite hiking place? It will never be the same now. What if you had a special trip to go to? It will never be the same now. All those things change. Now, because I know this, I've gone through this, taking someone, somebody would, and I actually knew somebody, and it was really sad, and this is why it's so important. I'm not saying you can always do this, because sometimes, depending on who you are, it doesn't always work out. But I knew someone a long time ago. It was horrible. Starlight just got into one of those crazy one-night stands, horrible things. I wasn't quite myself. I wasn't ready for a relationship. So I ended up being a friend to somebody, like, you know, thinking that it was a friend kind of relationship, see if it was going to go anywhere. Starlight did not have any rules at this time. I wasn't, like, you know, trying to keep myself pure and clean at this time. You know, it was a lesson that I had to experience. So, and it was going totally against who I am, really, because I don't like one night stands, and I don't like friends with benefits. Absolutely not. We're good. I don't, you know, to me that's like being a prostitute, you know. So anyway, this was so sad, because this particular man, he wasn't really, you know, people will say they're in you know, they want to get in a relationship, but they didn't really, you know, they played the field too long to even be a serious person, to even want a relationship with anybody. So with this particular person, what this person was doing, Starlight had no clue. And so these are things that you're going to want to think about, is that, and a lot of people do these things. What they do is that this is what this man was doing, and this is something that you might want to break that, you know, habit, because it is so hard. You know, when you're with someone, don't you want to take them to your favorite hiking place, favorite restaurant? How about the store that you like to go shop in? Sometimes it's impossible. You're not going to be able to make this happen. But this man was going out with women, and then would take them to the same restaurants, the same hiking place. Everything was a repeat, you know, because he was with many women, on and off, you know, just a player out there, you know, just playing the field. And Starlight got involved, you know, in a mess. And so you got to be careful with that. You really don't want to be that man or woman out there saying, hey, yes, you know, and especially if you just broke up with someone, or had a one night stand with someone, or friends with benefits with someone, and now you got a new girl, you know, and you don't know, really. People could tell you all kinds of shit as far as, like, when were, you know, the last time they were in a relationship. And they could have said, oh, you know, I haven't really been with anybody in a long time. But you don't really know, right? How can you know that? You know, it's easier for a guy to know if a woman had sex than it is for a woman to know if a guy had sex, I have to say. But with that being said, sometimes it doesn't even matter anyway. So with that being said, is you got to be careful, like, taking, you know, a new girl to the same places, the same restaurant, the same hiking place. Because what ended up happening, and this is how Starlight was a naughty girl, and this guy, I knew that he was, I felt like he was cheating on me, you know. And so Starlight had little tricks. He would never go at my house. I always went to his house, you know, and, you know, for a weekend or whatever, weekend thing or whatever. And so that's why I don't like these things, is because it was not a relationship. It was just, that's what it was. And so Starlight really thought this man was messing around, you know, thought maybe he's, you know, and he had you know, guys do this. They have like a notebook and all the girls' names and their numbers and their, you know, their addresses and all that. And women could do this too, is like, you know, hey, let's see if Sarah's around, you know, I haven't seen Sarah in a while. You know, so this was the kind of guy that Starlight was dealing with, and it was just because Starlight wasn't ready for a relationship at that point. And I was using it as a stress reliever, really, to be honest with you. And so with that being said, is Starlight's sneaky. So what I ended up doing is Starlight would go to his house on the weekend, and Starlight would leave panties underneath the blanket, you know, or hair ties, you know, like leaving them in different places, planting evidence, you know, that there's a girl in his house. And so he would have everything cleaned up every time. And that's what I knew, there's something fishy about this. How come every time I go to his house, The bathroom garbage was always empty. Evidence was already taken before I could even find any. I would dig in your garbage if hey, is there any girl hair in here? So you got it. It's crazy. But when you're dealing with somebody that's playing the field, that I didn't want to be with a guy that's that was the thing that I told this man. I don't want to be having sex with you if you're out here with 5 other chicks. We're good. That's how people get, things. We were using condoms, but shit happens sometimes, So anyway, he ended up bringing me to a restaurant and to go get pizza. So we go out to get pizza, and the waitresses been seeing this guy a lot, and they were shocked, because they were letting me know. They were waitresses, and they saw me, So he's been bringing the same women to the same restaurants, and the waitresses work there all the time. So they seen that he was an unfaithful man and that he was screwing around on these women. So they were letting me know in a funny way, because they're, this guy's got another girl and another girl. So you got to really be careful with that. Now I'm giving you pointers for guys that want to cheat on their women, or women that want to cheat on their, guys. Yeah, don't go to the same. Yeah, if you're going to cheat on people, don't go to the same restaurant, because those waitresses or waiters might kind of let the person know that, yeah, he's not being faithful or she's not being faithful for you. So these are things that you got to be mindful is when you break up with somebody. You want to, take the new girl when you get healed, when you have time, is don't go to the same places, because that, you're going to have memories of your ex to, that restaurant. Hey, this is my favorite restaurant. I brought my wife here. Like we always ate, you might even want to order the same dish that you ordered, when you were with your ex. You might have a favorite meal there, and that might have been something that your ex and you, ate together. So, and other stuff is to get rid of all like if your ex gave you anything, get rid of everything. That ring, yes, get rid of it. Believe me, when Starlight thought she was so-called married before, I was like, here you go. I don't want your ring. Most women would have gone out and got the money for it. Nah, you know what? I don't want it. Here, you can use that for your next wife. Yeah. So those are things that people really don't think about, is all these things change, and it's really a good thing to, get out of your comfort zone and find new places, new restaurants, new hiking places. Don't bring the same girl, the next girl, or the guy, to somewhere that, you had a romantic, sorry, I'm looking at numbers. I got numbers out here. Because that energy, those memories are going to come back up in your head of, just like this guy here, he had a camp. So he had his house, and then he had a camp. So, Starlight was setting traps everywhere. Here, I actually found a pair of panties underneath his sheets, and I'm like, so I decided I'm going to leave a pair of panties under his sheets too. So I'm leaving evidence. And it is kind of funny though, when I found these panties, like, he always cleaned his sheets, before I came to it, I'm thinking, if you clean your sheets, how come I'm finding panties in your bed, And I don't know, he claimed it was his. I don't know. So it is, women, these are tips for you if you think somebody's messing around. And guys, think of ways of leaving things behind. Even hair works. That's how I found out somebody else was messing around on me. Is like, how is it possible there'd be so much blonde hair in my tub? Even doing laundry, I'm like, what the heck, hair sticks on clothes, and that was somebody that this person worked with, is that, there's a lot going on at work, maybe a, lunch break, an hour lunch break, so I was finding blonde hair. There's nobody had blonde hair in the house. There should not be any blonde hair in the tub, in the shower, enough to, just like taking it off of a brush. So those are ways that you can find evidence on people, is leaving little, the simplest little things that are not noticeable. So anyway, those are things that you got to really think about, like the holidays, and like I said, places that you go, the family, how are you going to deal with each of those things? Are you going to cut ties? A lot of times it's best just to cut all relationships off connected to that person, because you don't really know them very well, and they could play little games back and forth. A lot of people like to get in between relationships, try to get people back together, try to start up problems. So those are things that you got to watch out for as far as, breaking up with someone. And, and it's a lot adjusting to, and the other thing that I want to say really quick is also, the alone time that you have after you, you were, maybe they weren't around ever, but if you were in a relationship, getting used to being alone again, being used to watching TV alone again, getting used to sleeping in your bed alone again, getting used to taking a shower by yourself. Maybe they never were in a shower, So being alone time, going hiking by yourself, doing this by yourself, doing that by yourself, that's another adjustment that anybody that goes through a breakup, you got to adjust to those things, and you got to deal with these. And if really that relationship was so bad, don't think that, hey, I need to go back in that relationship. Guess what? If you already did all the steps to try to make it work and they weren't working with you, there's nothing to go back to, so that alone time is good for you. You can heal. And yes, you're going to have emotional times, you're going to find yourself maybe crying and feeling bad and all these things, guys and women. It's not just women that cry over relationships. The whole thing that, thinking that, I don't know how I messed up, but it was a lesson. Just understand it was a lesson, things that you had to learn, so then God can prepare you and get you ready for the one that really God really has, the perfect one for you. Not that they're perfect, but God has that perfect one for you. But that was just a teacher, and it gets you prepared to see, make sure you learn the lesson in that relationship, of what was the lesson. Don't forget what the lesson was, so that way you don't repeat it. Make sure you're communicating with your loved one. Make sure you have time for those people. Make sure, you're not too busy on the computer or not too busy watching movies. And when I was sitting here and this couple was here, guess what was going on? The guy was, because I went with an ex like this. He was into the football. And, he was all about the football. They're not really there as a couple. I know what it's like being ignored, being with someone. They're all into you're nobody when the football comes on, You're not even there. Or gambling, you're not even there. You don't even exist in their reality, because that's their God. That's why Starlight broke up with this person, is because, So anyway, I love you. And my heart goes out to anyone out there that could be going through a breakup, maybe you already broke up with someone. Maybe, you're going through these changes and how it messes with you emotionally and psychologically, physically, it has all kinds of ways, And just remember, it was a lesson. God's got something greater for you out there. Don't give up on relationships like most people do. It takes time to heal, and that's why you need this time alone with yourself and really heal and keep your heart right with these people, whatever they have done, and how things ended. And sometimes if you have kids, it is even worse. And even if you're married, there's sometimes people want the divorce thing really quick. Everybody's different on how they end things, and if children are involved, that's a totally different ball game as dealing with, relationships like that when they have kids involved, when maybe, you both have a kid together. That's another thing to deal with, and that's a very hard thing, not just for the adults, but definitely for the kids, for them to understand. Kids don't understand when they hear that mommy and daddy are getting divorced, mommy and daddy are separating. It is mind-blowing. I know what it's like to just what? You gotta be kidding me. You're my mom and dad? you know, now I get a new mom? I don't want the new mom, you know? So they go through a lot. So you got to really be mindful of how you deal with this stuff when you have children, and take things slow for them and explain, talk to them, communicate with them, let them know that, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to, I met a lady not too long ago. She had a big, huge problem because the way she was programmed to think that you could never get divorced from someone, that you always had to be with that person forever until you died, and till death do us apart, So there's some people, they have a hard time with that. They're like, I'm supposed to be there all the time. Are you happy? Did you work? They're if you've done everything, and not saying that you were perfect, they're not worth your company. They're not worth to have in your life if they couldn't even be there when you were there. When you were together. So, but be mindful of how you are with the kids. And don't fight in front of the kids. Be adults, teach them that it's okay, that you're breaking up with someone, and communicate with your kids that, it's better to be happy than to be living together with somebody that's miserable, because there's people that when they're living together with someone and they're miserable and they're not happy and they're trying to force something to happen that was never meant to happen, to stay together, they could fight. And that could get really nasty, and the kids are in the middle of the yelling and fighting, and the kids really don't need that. So do it for the kids' sake if you're not going to do it for yourself. Say, you know what, my kids need a better lifestyle to live, instead of being stuck in this being in this abusive relationship, or where they feel uncomfortable, because that's exactly what they're going to feel. They're going to feel uncomfortable all the time. They're going to feel like it's their fault why mommy and daddy are fighting. How come they're not talking anymore? It really affects them in a negative way. And so it's better for the kids' mental and their emotional well-being not to live in fear every day of their life because mom and dad are not getting along. I love you so much, and this is Starlight. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, plus give me a thumbs up, and you can leave me a message down below, beep, beep, beep. Plus, you could share my videos with your family or friends, and don't forget the notification bell, and check out my playlist. And you can also find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K, Dingman Starlight. Thank you for watching. This is Starlight. Namaste. This is Starlight. Love, light, and peace.